Hello, this is Stephen L, and yes, we are back with another 007 movie review, and today we'll be reviewing 2015's Spectre. Now, in 2012, Skyfall was released. It was one of the biggest hits ever. It was a huge success at the box office, and it was critically acclaimed. It got nominated for an Oscar with Adele's song of Skyfall, and I believe won. And it was just a great film in general. So the next film really had to live up to the expectations, and the question really was, what were they going to do? And the answer to that was this film, Spectre. And for us hardcore Bond fans, we were livid. It had been essentially a long time since Spectre and all its characters have ever been used in the Bond series, on the official Eon Bond series, as they haven't really used them since 1971's Diamonds Are Forever. Due to legal battles they couldn't use. But now they got the rights to Spectre. And with that, we were prepared to see what was next. Daniel Craig was still signed on to Bond, and Skyfall's director returned. So the question is, of course, how does this film do, and how do I feel about it? Well, before we get any further into that, let's hop into the cast. The cast for this film include Daniel Craig back as Bond, and this time around I think he's finally become the Bond we all know. For his first really 3 films, it was either him being a rookie, becoming the 007 character we know, but in his third film he was sort of like an old dog. He's finally back to being the classic Bond, which I felt is great, and was honestly the good road to go. The main Bond girl for this film is Madeleine Swan, played by Léa Seydoux. And again, if you remember my top 10 Bond girls, she was an honorable mention. And spoiler alert, this character will be returning for No Time to Die, so we're going to see furthermore of her character. Another character that is in this film is the character of Franz Oberhauser, played by the already brilliant Christoph Waltz. Now this character is going to play a bit of a role of a story, so I'm not really going to spoil, but everyone knows immediately, spoiler alert for this character, we absolutely know what I'm talking about if you've seen this film. An interesting thing, we have a returning character, Mr. White, who we of course know is played by Giuseppe Christensen, probably butchering that name. And of course he was featured in the first 2 Craig films, so I find it very interesting that he's brought back for this installment, and he too has a bit of a role to play within the story of this film. Other characters include the character of Mr. Hicks, who is portrayed by the Draxman himself. Jeez, I really need a drink. Dave Bautista, probably butchering that name. And what I like about him is he's a modern day interpretation of a classic Bond henchman. Other characters we also have here are Max Denby, playing the character of C, and he's basically the head of this new joint intelligence service, and he too plays a role within the story. Other characters, of course, include Lucia Scaria, the wife of a big Spectre assassin, played by Monica Bellicia, probably butchering that name, like I always do. And speaking of the assassin himself, we have Marco Scara, like Lucia Scara and Marco Scara, and this guy is portrayed by Alessandro Cremino, and is basically was the top assassin for the Spectre organization before Mr. Hinks took his place, and I'm pretty sure we're kind of butchering his character, revelation. Other fan favorites, of course, back. We got M, still portrayed, M this time, still portrayed by, of course, Ralph Fiennes, And what I like, and again, we get to see more about his aim and how he operates a bit more in this film, which I like. He manages to have stuff that I think Judi Dench really never did. This one's more by the book. When I felt Judi Dench's Emma's a bit more lax. Speaking of Judi Dench, she has like a special cameo appearance in the film, and and in many ways, even though she's dead, her legacy still lives on within the Craig film, which I really like. Other characters, of course, we were introduced in the previous film are back. Bill Tanner, still portrayed by Rory Kinnear, the MI6's chief of staff. Q is back, still portrayed by Ben Whishaw. And again, we get to see really more of how he really is, of his interpretation, which I like. And of course, Eve Moneypenny is back, still portrayed by Mia Harris. Again, these essentially reoccurring MI6 staff gets to play a huge role within this story. I think more than I say their characters have ever in previous interpretations combined. But with that out of the way, the cast, let's head straight into this. Let's head straight into the plot. For the first time ever for a Craig Bond film, we actually start the film with the classic gun barrel. It has been a long time, and it feels nice. It feels like we're really getting back to classic Bond in a way. We then open up with this Day of the Dead festival in Mexico. Now, at the time, they have never done this before in Mexico, this Day of the Dead thing. But when the Bond series went to filming, they went all out for this, and I think they now kind of do it to this day. But it was a huge event, and the fact that Bond series kind of influenced the place there is something really interesting. We then get this very interesting long shot of essentially Bond in disguise with another woman, essentially following his target, the assassin, Marco. And I like this nice one shot where he goes to this hotel room. It's a beautifully nice one shot. You can tell they might have done some camera trickery, but I love it. It is beautifully done. And just as he gets to his hotel room, he then leaves his woman, and essentially walks on the roof, just casual, strolling like he owns like he's the coolest motherfucker in I would say, the city. And then he gets to a place where the assassin is, clearly in a meeting. He then manages to use some device to overhear what they have to say, and here's some important lines said that would essentially, be a huge influence on his case, and essentially for the plot later in the film. The line that he overheard is Pale King, and Bond then ends up sniping some of the assassin's goons, and ends up firing in a suitcase that causes a mass explosion. He manages, of course, to dodge the explosion and essentially falls on a couch. I'm not joking. I genuinely got a huge crack out of that because it was like a kind of an homage to Roger Moore, but it managed to still feel real and tame. Eventually, the assassin makes a run for it with Bond following, eventually both ending up in a helicopter, resulting in a very cool fight scene within the inside and outside the helicopter. And essentially, the assassin is kicked out of the helicopter and falls to his death, but manages to get control of the helicopter and fly away. But not before finding a ring with the classic Spectre logo, realizing that this assassin may be a part of a far bigger big criminal organization. A perfect way to start this film, with a lot of Bond familiarities, but at the same time trying to do something different. I love the camera work, the opening. I feel it is a fantastic one-shot, probably one of the best one-shots probably ever done in the history of cinema. I stand by that. I think it's, for me, on the same level of that one-shot scene in Goodfellas, when Henry Hill's going in the back of the restaurant. I feel that that type of thing is on par with that. But I will admit, then following this, we get the theme song. The song of this one is done by Sam Smith, and the song is Writings on the Wall. I'll be honest, when I first saw this in the theater, I was not a fan. I don't hate it, but it never really grabbed me. It took a while for this to really grow on me, but even then, it still doesn't break into top 10 for me. I'm not exactly, and I'm not sure why. I don't know, this song just doesn't really work for me, per se. And I think it's because, I don't know, there's something about this song that just doesn't gel with me. I mean, if you can like it, go for it. And I'll be honest, like I said, it's kind of grown on me, but not enough to break into top 10 or one I'd have on a playlist. I guess, like again, certain songs are subjective and it's down to personal taste, which is fine. Everyone's entitled to it. But for this, it's just not one of my favorites. If it's one of yours, that's fine. It's not one of mine, but it doesn't. But it's not a song that I hate. I've definitely grown to like it after its initial release. And honestly, compared that to Skyfall, this one just kind of lacked. And probably that's why, when comparing Skyfall's song and this, it's always people going to choose Skyfall over this. Most people. Anyway, but that out of the way. We then go back to M's office, where Bond is getting essentially, you know, the classic M getting up Bond for the event in Mexico. It's revealed that he was not meant to go there, and M is asking what was he up to in Mexico. Bond is a bit cocky, doesn't reveal anything, and he's put on essentially a bit of leave. And we also get a bit of storyline how they're under review. This kind of incident could essentially cost everyone's job at MI6. Bond's crazy stunt. And I like the idea, and I like how interesting that it's clear that Bond's not really on an official mission, which is interesting. And it kind of does throw a bit of a throwback to Bond going rogue, which is honestly what he's kind of doing within the film, but we'll get to that. We then meet, of course, sorry about that for a minute. We then meet the character of C, or at least that's the nickname Bond gave him. His real name is Mac Denby. He's the head of the New Joint Intelligence Service. And I like how, you know, you can tell that he's just a slimy guy. You can tell in some films a guy is naturally going to be the bad guy. And I like how Bond gave him his own nickname. It was fun, and you can definitely tell that Bond's becoming a little bit more of, Craig has become a little bit more of the classic Bond we know. A bit cocky, a little bit arrogant, and definitely overall fun. Also, C's a character, I will admit, even though we know he's a bad guy, come on, you can tell some characters are going to be bad guys in film. He basically wants to bring the intelligence out of the Dark Ages and into the modern age. Even though that's interesting, didn't we kind of go through with that with the whole, in the previous film with, you know, how the 00 and the spy, is it still relevant today? I don't know. It kind of feels they're kind of rehashing it a bit, but at the same time, not really, because they're trying to do something different. So who knows where we go further with this in the film. Just as Bond is leaving, he runs into Moneypenny, who says she has some stuff from Skyfall, the place that got blown up in the previous film, and Bond basically says to bring it to his apartment. I love the scene how when they get to Bond's apartment, it's kind of like, it hasn't, like, not everything's unpacked and out, and basically Bond's just, and to be fair, Bond's rarely at home. He's always off at either exotic locations or staying in fancy hotel rooms. Why would he want to stay in his apartment? Moneypenny essentially questions, like, what he's been, like, doing, why is he doing this, and it's revealed by Bond that he received essentially a video from M, clearly recorded before her death, and he's honoring her wishes to do this, to investigate this person. Part of me was surprised that they would actually bring Judi Dench back for this one scene. Part of me doesn't mind, but it also feels a bit out of place. Interesting fact, this is one of the few times in the series we actually get to visit Bond's place. Once in Dr. No, Live and Let Die, and now here. So we've essentially visited Bond's place 3 times in the series. Something rather different. And it explains the whole reason to... And honestly, it's just fun. Again, a few times. Also, with the stuff he got received that was essentially things recovered from Skype, we get to find out a bit more of his childhood memories. And one is, when his parents died, he was raised by this Mr. Oberhauser. And essentially took him under his wing and tried to care for him. It's also revealed that he had a son whose face is mysteriously burnt away. Anyway, with that, Bond is then taken to the special underground digs for Q's sort of like new base. Bill Tanner takes him there. We get again, Q takes him through his lab, some of the stuff he's working on. We get to see what's left of the destroyed Aston Martin from Skyfall, and I like Q makes the little joke. I think I said bring it back in one piece, not bring back one piece. I like how Bond is a little bit emotional, or a little bit, I guess you could say emotional with his destroy car, and when Q makes the joke, he just looks at him, like, don't say that, I might break your neck. But the most important thing that he's given here is, first off, we get introduced to this brand new 007 car that was specifically made for this film, and it is stunning. It was said it was originally meant for him, but it's being reassigned to 009. He's also given a watch, and he's asked if it does anything. He says, well, it helps you tell time, and basically, Q gives a hint for this possible gadget. He has then gone to get this sort of tracker implanted in his arm, per M's orders, but Bond manages to kind of a little bit intimidate Q, just saying, like, when it will fully, start up. And I just like the banter between Bond and Q here. If I could describe Craig throughout this film, he's a seasoned professional, but he's a bit more cocky, and has this attitude that I've never seen Craig done in a Bond film before. In Skyfall, he was the old dog trying to regain his legs. In the first two, he was a rookie. He was more emotional, but here he's the seasoned professional, and I think this really helps with the, really progress this film. Bond ends up, however, secretly stealing the car that Q had, and ends up going to Rome, where he attends to this funeral of the assassin that he killed earlier in the film. Now, I love the car. It's stylish, and Bond also looks absolutely cool, cool as hell with the glasses and that suit. Craig is pulling this look off. We find that when he's at the funeral, he sees this, the assassin's widow, and essentially tries to contact her. Then later that night, at the widow's place, she walks out and is, judging by the music and the emotions, she's expected to be killed by her bodyguards, clearly expecting her death. But she is saved at the last minute by Bond, and Bond essentially tries to get some information out of her, and basically offers her protection. And it's done in the usual way of Bond being a little bit cheeky, but, well, not really cheeky, but you could kind of get that little impression. But it ends with the classic way of Bond bedding her. She was and the actress playing, I think it was the oldest woman Bond had slept with in the franchise. Something I think was really progressive at the time, but I don't know. It's not just because he's younger. I don't know, it just felt Bond could have done something to get information out rather than I don't know, the scene doesn't fully work with me. I'm not trying to be, I don't really know, it just doesn't fully work. And even in the theater, I'm just thinking, I get it, Bond, you're the ladies' man, you need to shag everyone, and yes, she is hot, even for her age, but I don't know, it just feels wrong here. Something just feels wrong. Anyway, I also do like the little scene where he offers protection and basically says, and basically mentions Felix Leiter's name. And I like how they keep Felix Leiter's, like, that name, proving that he's still relevant. And I especially like how he'll be returning for No Time to Die. Thanks to the information given, Bond goes to this meeting, and where basically Spectre, where this organization is. And all the major heads there, along with their leader, it feels classic Bond, these classic meetings with these secret organizations. I've done far better here than it ever was in Quantum. We also here get to see not just its mysterious leader, portrayed by Christoph Waltz, but also the top assassin, Mr. Hicks. And I like how it just quietly calms in, and essentially goes and kills, like, one of the members, to take on the position to essentially assassinate this guy, the Pale King. Again, a reference in the earlier in the film. And just as that, Bond covers blown. Not because anything he's done, but because he knows Bond's here, and reveals himself. Bond then quickly makes his escape, and we get the classic Bond chase to a car chase. Now, even though it's fun, and we get a bit more of the story as we find out that the so-called Pale King is actually Mr. White, a character that we've known from previous films, and I like how they brought him back. Because honestly, he was, I think, one of the most missed opportunities in the Bond series for a really unique character, but not brought back and fully realized. I like how he was brought back, even if it will be for a brief scene. The Bond chase, it kind of feels like a car commercial, and I like how as Bond trying to use the gadgets, we find out they're not installed yet. So he took the car before the gadgets were ever installed, and of course he manages to eject out of his car in a parachute ejector seat, lands, walks away, and just basically does the witty one-liner to a nearby person. Good afternoon, how are you doing? All that. It's fun as hell, and Craig pulls it off ever so great. Meanwhile, while that's all happening, C is at his conference with basically all the intelligence communities to essentially create this Nine Eyes plan, essentially to bring, modern, essentially Secret Service stuff into the modern age, and basically having the old, MI6 stuff completely irrelevant kind of thing. However, it has to be unanimous in order for this to go through. Again, I'm pointing out, South Africa being the one not to do so, and as a result, C's plan for this vision with more drone surveillance and not relying on a 00 agent with the license to kill. Again, the whole premise of the 00 section is still relevant, is spy work still relevant in the modern age? We just tackled this in Skyfall, granted, it's done differently, but it's still kind of the same. One thing I really like about this throughout the film is M and C's rivalry, because they have different views, and honestly, Ralph Fiennes owns it, because I have a feeling that him running this MI6, with him the head, you clearly get an indication that this guy was once an agent. He knows what an agent goes through, and that I absolutely love. And again, both C and M have completely different ideologies, and I like that this makes their characters rather different. However, again, that kind of goes later in the film. However, and when M gets word of this car chase thinking Bond did it, he then calls up Q and asks if this was Bond, but Q covers for him saying it wasn't, and saying that Bond's in this location, not this one. Bond, by wondering where Bond is, well, he's gone to this location in Austria to meet Mr. White, and Mr. White has definitely aged a lot. It turns out that Quantum, that he was, again, he was a member of Quantum, but was a member of this organization, but he backed out of this plan with the leader, who was going to go further ahead with this new agenda, this new thing going on. And now he's poisoned and is slowly dying. He and Bond then make a deal. He tells her his daughter knows more about this than he does. In exchange, he asks that he protect her, and how she will give him all the information he will need. He then when Bond agrees and gives him his word, Mr. White then kills himself. Bond then heads to this, medical or health, psychiatric retreat thing, and it's stunning. Something I definitely think this film is absolutely stunning. Again, I feel they're kind of trying to copy a lot of Skyfall with that, but it works so well here. As Bond gets there, we get this nice scene where he meets Mr. White's daughter. Madeline Swan. She's a doctor at this psyche institution, and when Bond meets her, they have this scene where basically he's explaining how his father sent him. His father's dead. He made a promise where he can help him take down this organization, and the thing they have to go on is the America, and she knows what he means, but she refuses to participate with Bond, and basically kind of orders him to really leave the premises. The Bond then goes to the bar and orders an alcoholic beverage, but like the bartender, sorry, we don't serve any alcohol. He's like, well, I love this place already. I like it. It's a funny scene, having Bond in a bar, but no alcohol served. It's a nice little, I guess, a little joke. Q then turns up at the bar, bar, and basically kind of orders Bond to get back before, you get us both in trouble. Bond then turns to Q and basically hands him his ring and tells him to analyze it, and saying how, to further go with this, on this thing with him. And Q agrees. Whilst both Bond and he leave, we find out that Mr. Hinks is there. He managed to track down the location because there was a security camera in Mr. White's place, and Mr. Hinks and his men end up kidnapping Madeline Swan, taking her into a car, and Bond, essentially chasing after them. And Q trying to dodge men trying to kill him, and he manages to get away. Now, the scene where Bond is chasing these guys, actually in an aeroplane, is fun and really excitable, but also feels we've done this before, but I can really enjoy the moment. And Bond ends up, of course, rescuing Madeline Swan, and Hinks does what I call a Jaws. You know, you think he's dead, but he's not. He's gonna keep coming back. Madeline Swan, again, refuses kind of to go along with Bond, but when Bond says, "I'm your best shot at staying alive," she realizes she has no choice but to come along. Eventually, Madeline and Bond meet up in Q's apartment, where it's revealed, essentially, the leader of Spectre, or at least Spectre, even though we kind of already knew this, is Franz Oberhauser. And we find out that the assassin at the beginning of the movie, along with Mr. White, even Green from Quantum, and Le Chiffre, were all members of Spectre, even Raoul Silva from the first film, from the Skyfall, is also a member of Spectre, along with the assassin as well. Turns out that all the villains that Bond has faced were part of this organization, and when they ask what this organization is, Madeline reveals that the organization is Spectre, and the ring proves that Franz Oberhauser is alive, as he's supposed to be dead. Now, I don't mind Quantum being essentially organization part of Spectre, or like a sub-branch. My problem is Raoul Silva really being a part of it. I don't know if that really should have been a thing. I don't know. You could have made that he had maybe done some work with Spectre, but never really, was an actual official member. That's really my gripe with that. I don't know. It just felt like that bit was a little bit forced. Again, just hearing that name, Spectre, within the film, just honestly brings me so much memories of the classic Bond. We find out that the American, the lead that they have, and Madeline knows, is actually essentially is a motel, and the reason she knows because she and her father will kind of always go there. They end up going to the hotel in Tangier, which is where the American is, and both Bond and Madeline stay there. We then get the scene where, again, it's nighttime, Madeline's asleep on the bed, Bond on the chair. I like how Madeline doesn't trust Bond, not really, and, kind of keeps his distance away from him. And we then see Bond having this conversation with this rat, kind of throwback to Diamonds. It's a fun scene, and when the rat goes into this hole, Bond ends up smashing the wall and reveals that why White always came here. It's essentially this information setup, but not really. Basically, where Mr. White's been keeping his secrets. And like when Bond stumbles across a tape of Vespa, I like that little continuity there, and was absolutely fun. A nice throwback to Casino, and really I like how they still keep her presence alive in the rebooted continuity, and just show how much of an influence, or I should say an impact, she had on Bond. Again, Bond's reaction to the tape, and he throws it away. It kind of shows that a little bit he cares, but also how he's come so far. And he then goes to this, I guess, old dinosaur age laptop, where he and Madeline end up searching information behind. They end up finding essentially that the computer and basically everything there to lead to a special location where essentially Spectre's big base is in the middle of nowhere. And how do they get there? They take a train. A nice throwback to classic Bond with them on the train, and of course we get this dinner car scene. Kind of reminds me of From Russia with Love, where essentially like the two are there on the dining car eating, and I like how they are decked. Madeline's in this nice dress, and Bond in again a tux, but this time he's wearing a white suit jacket. Something honestly hadn't been done since, I guess, the Roger Moore's last Bond film, where Bond wore that white dinner tux. Something that hasn't been done, but it also kind of feels a throwback to Connery's look in Goldfinger. And because Bond's on a train, one thing that always happens is Bond gets into a fight on the train. Mr. Hicks turns up, and this brutal fight goes throughout the whole train, ending up to the cargo hole, where he ends up getting this rope. Hicks gets a rope around his neck and is thrown off the train. I like how he does that little, like he says one more line. Hicks says a line before he gets dragged off. And I'm not sure if he's dead, but I think he kind of is. I don't know if he'll be brought back for No Time to Die, but I think he's dead, and there's no way they'll bring him back, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. And this leads to a moment where Bond and Madeline end up the classic making out. Of course they do. Also, I wanted to point out, before that scene, we get a scene where Bond and Madeline, well, at least Madeline talking a bit about her past. Well, she hates guns, she knows how to use them, and the scene, and basically how this guy came, and yeah, a guy with a gun came to her, and essentially is a big part of her past. This is, yeah, I think will be explored more so in No Time to Die. Bond and Madeline's train destination ends up in the middle of nowhere, where they are then taken in a Rolls Royce, I think a wing to Goldfinger's car, and ends up at this location. Bond, of course, his weapon is taken away from him, like they always do, and kind of, I think that's a throwback to Dr. No, where, you know, him and Madeline are then given, like, evening gowns to, like, other clothes to wear, and of course they come face to face with Franz Oberhauser in this nice scene where they see an actual meteorite. And again, a scene that we find out Franz Oberhauser is Bond's stepbrother. Something we find out. I find it interesting in a way that they're now and this is what I mean by interesting. You know the Austin Powers films, how they've been, you know, constantly parodying the Bond series? Well, in the final Austin Powers film, it's revealed that Dr. Evil is Austin Powers' brother. Well, I felt that they're now copying that, which I find to be very different and even a bit interesting. We should also find out by this point in the film that a few things have happened. MI6 kind of shut down, everyone's lost their job, and how the African nation has kind of gave in to the whole Nine Eyes program. And we also find out that C is in league with Spectre, and basically Oberhauser's big plan is to essentially, you know, launch this Nine Eyes program to control the world. Again, Spectre's organization is always world domination, but it's done in the more modern age with technology and all that, which I find to be very interesting. And again, feels classic Spectre. We then get the scene which I feel kind of, a few things come out of nowhere here. One, Oberhauser shows a video to Madeline of the confrontation between Mr. White and Bond, you know, before he killed himself. The Bond then goes, no, stop. Probably because he doesn't want Madeline to see you know, his father, you know, her father shoot herself. But I always thought it was because maybe Bond was thinking that Franz was going to manipulate the footage to maybe how Bond kills him. I don't know. It feels it comes out of nowhere here. But Bond then gets knocked out. When Bond wakes up, he's strapped to this chair, and like as soon as he wakes up, the first thing he sees is the classic white cat, a throwback to the classic Spectre, with the infamous leader always petting a white cat. It's a nice throwback. We also find out that Franz Oberhauser has a huge grudge against Bond, again, the half-brothers, and turns out that he faked his own death, created this organization, really just to get away and basically, you know, become powerful. Well, at least that's how I've always interpreted it. But he always took a great pleasure in finding out that he and Bond had constantly crossed paths, never met, and always enjoyed how he caused Bond so much pain. He got absolute joy out of it. This makes his and of course, he gets his infamous reveal. Turns out that he changed his name from Franz Oberhauser to names more akin to from his mother's side of the family. Ernst Stavro Blofeld. I'll be honest, we all knew immediately when Spectre was back, Blofeld was going to appear. The problem, we all knew that Christoph Waltz was casted as Blofeld. It's a logical choice, but I wish the reveal could have been really more. Really made that Franz Oberhauser really was just an operative, really working for the, you know, this big plan, working for the big boss. And we find out, and we could have really had someone else be the head of Spectre, you know, the real Ernst Stavro Blofeld. I don't know, I felt kind of came a little bit out of nowhere. Anyway, the scene where Bond essentially is tied up and being tortured is brutal, but then Madeline comes over, you know, to help him, not like a fight, but basically he's allowed to come over and hands him his classic watch. Franz hands her the watch, and basically the watch goes off, causing an explosion around Blofeld, resulting in essentially something that will become prevalent later in the film. Both Bond and Madeline end up essentially having a firefight, escaping the facility, and causing mass explosion. Classic Bond, and if I recall correctly, this held the world record for the biggest explosion probably done in a Bond film. And I'll be honest, it's both great, but also quite underwhelming at the same time. I don't know how a scene can balance both being great and underwhelming. I don't know how it does that. Bond and Madeline then make their way back to London, where they meet M, essentially Q, Matt, Moneypenny, and even Tanner for this assault on essentially C's big plan. And it also should be revealed that they meet in this place at this safe house of Hildeland, I think it is, and it's supposed to be a throwback to classic Bond, something, I'm not entirely sure, I think it's something from the novels, because I don't really recall that appearing in the actual films. Maybe someone can clue me in on this, I'm not sure, but it's meant to be like something a bit of a throwback. And as they go to really take down, essentially, C, at least, C, Madeline doesn't want to go because of the big gun battle, and Bond and essentially them end up leaving to go and, stop, essentially Spectre's master plan. Just as they're on their way, they end up getting Bond and M end up getting ambushed. Bond ends up taken away, and M is quickly rescued by essentially the MI6 team. Something I like in this film is that the MI6 team is getting more to be used in this film than I think they've ever done in previous installments. Something I find very fun. Now, the goons take Bond to a place, but manages to make his escape, and he finds out the place he's taken to is the old MI6 building that was blown up in the previous film. And as Bond makes his way in there, you can clearly see, like, all these lines are basically pictures of his past. Vesper, Le Chiffre, I think M. And it's clear that this version of Blofeld, because again, Blofeld obviously survived the explosion. And I like the bit how clearly he's obsessed with Bond. He loves to have, caused him pain. Something that's different. And people don't really like Christoph Waltz as Blofeld. But I don't mind it because it's something different. He could have easily gone the safe route and honestly just did a carbon copy of Donald Pleasance, the image we think of the classic Blofeld. I like he did something different. Will I personally have not liked him being half-brother? Yes. But I don't mind the idea that he'd love to have realized he caused Bond pain for so many years. And basically, he wants to control the world, and he could have made it his backstory was how he came from nothing. He built himself up from the ground, from willpower, determination, and brains. And he basically saw himself, he would never go back down to being that lone person again. Something that really shows us that this version of Blofeld is drastically different. Also something different this time around. When Bond re-meets up with Blofeld, he has his classic scar. I love the idea that Bond gives Blofeld his scar. Something that could fuel their rivalry in the many films to come. And Blofeld again quickly makes another escape and basically does an explosion timer, and Bond kinda has to find his way out. Just as that's happening, M makes his way into C's office, and they have the confrontation. Just as how I think Bond has his arch nemesis in Blofeld, M has his clearly arch nemesis in C. The two have this rivalry. The two actors playing C and M absolutely kill it. And I like how for a moment C thinks he's got the upper hand, but and eventually tries to kill, M. M by saying that M stands for moron, but when he fires the gun, it's empty. And M says, you know what C stands for? Careless. I honestly thought he was going to say cockhead, but careless is fun. Thanks to Q, he manages to essentially take the whole C's, program offline, and essentially M ends up killing C. And I like how, the scene comes back where he says how being a 00 agent is something that's not easy. Yes, how all the intelligence data is not going to always help you get the answer you want. How a license to kill is also a license not to kill. And even though when he kills him, you can see that he's not fully comfortable with the decision he's made. Something I think does something very different to the character. Anyway, back to Bond. Actually, correction, sorry. C kind of kills himself, kind of. It's kind of underwhelming, but I do like how M doesn't really enjoy the sight of his death. I personally would have liked it if M killed him, because again, they built up the rivalry, but it would have been something fun nonetheless. Anyway, back to Bond. Bond manages to get out of the building, but he also finds that Madeline is there, tied up, courtesy of Blofeld, manages to quickly get him and her out just as the building goes down. He then ends up firing at the helicopter that Blofeld is trying to escape in. The helicopter crashes. Bond then quickly gets to the bridge and sees Blofeld trying to crawl away. And basically, Blofeld asks Bond to kill him, but Bond decides to spare him, realizing that the greater punishment he could give him is essentially have him watch Bond walk away to have a happy life while he spends the rest of his life locked up in essentially a prison. And I like that bit, honestly. I like how also M runs in to see this, probably hoping Bond doesn't kill him, not wanting... clearly sells the M sees a bit of Bond in himself. And I kind of get that across with Ralph Fiennes' performance. The film ends with the classic Aston Martin DB5 being rebuilt, and Bond driving away with Madeline, leaving behind the Secret Service lifestyle, and driving off essentially to have his happiness. I get a bit, that kind of reminds me a little bit of On Her Majesty's with Bond driving away with Tracy. And the film ends there, Spectre. Personally, now the question is, how did I enjoy the film? Spectre. This film should be remembered for finally bringing the Spectre criminal organization and characters back to the classic Bond series. Something we haven't done in a long time. I felt long overdue to bring them back. And how do I feel that now the question is, how do I feel they've handled the Spectre organization? I thought they did it pretty well, updating it to modern day. And I didn't mind Christoph Waltz's portrayal of Blofeld. I love the jealousy that he has towards, well, the jealousy towards Bond, the obsession, obsession and delight that he's always caused him pain. He's a more modern update of a classic Bond villain. I love the also added texture that Bond caused him his classic scar. The half-brother angle is something I could live without. Another thing I think I really like is the cinematography here with this film. I felt that it was great, and the supporting characters, like the MI6 regulars, get a lot to do. Madeline I genuinely liked, and some people are mixed with her. I genuinely liked her, and I wanted to see what we could do more with her character in the next film to follow. She's self-confident, intelligent, and I think during their time together, Bond develops some feelings for her and agrees to, and essentially the two go off to, have this like life together in order to, for the two to sort of, just leave the lifestyle behind. The question, well, how she's not really that special, but I can buy it. I can buy it. However, and I also really like this film because there's subtle Easter eggs to previous Bond moments, from other films like Dr. No. I get Thunderball vibe with that meeting, even on Her Majesty's in a way. But if there's one thing I think this film should be guilty of, it's a few things. One, it's with the whole MCU and basically all these big movie franchises now trying to constantly interconnect with each other, this film should be guilty of trying to be on that bandwagon. Like I said, some bits I don't mind, with Quantum being a part of Spectre. That made sense. Silver? No, he should have been independent. Not really. Also, I think this film was really trying just to, copy a lot of Skyfall. The problem is, I don't think this film was ever going to really be another Skyfall. It should have been like another Thunderball. How, Goldfinger was his big hit. Thunderball is just a film in its own right. It should have been, its own thing. But, yeah. Now, this film is mixed. Some love it, some hate it. I genuinely like it. It has its flaws, but I feel like the opening is pretty good. Up until, I would say, when they, on the train, I think the drag for me starts, and then the ending is kind of underwhelming. Some really great ideas I liked. And the ending, of course, if Craig ended his tenure after this, it would have been great. It would have been great. It would have been a good way to end and finally see his Bond get a happy ending. But the question is, how are they going to do this in the next film now? Because how are they going to probably retcon, or at least, ruin Bond's happy ending just for another film? I don't know. We'll find out when it finally gets released. Overall, I really like this film. Some people aren't a fan of it, and that's fine. It's completely subjective. All the Bond films that I've reviewed, whether I say I liked it, I hate it, I'm mixed, I find it average, it's all subjective and personal opinion based. And that's fun. And that's fine, because everyone's entitled to an opinion, and that's kind of it. Anyway, this is fun. And honestly, with all the Craig's films, we can definitely agree Skyfall and Casino Royale are definitely his two highlights. Quantum and Spectre are some of his least favorite entries, but we can all agree. But I definitely think that Spectre is way, way better than Quantum, and I genuinely liked it. This has flaws, but I can enjoy it, and I don't find it that bad as many people tend to make it out to be. And there we have it. That was Spectre, released in 2015. The film did reasonably well at the box office, with mixed reception from critics, and again, I don't see why this film really should be how people should not really like this film, as I feel like it's sort of an homage to classic Bond, and personally, I felt they did it rather well. This was directed by Sam Mendes, of course, this was his second Bond film, and after this, this would be his second last Bond film, at least by the time of this video, and he would end up leaving the series. With that film being, again, a big hit at the box office, though not as big as Skyfall, which of course I don't think anyone would be big as Skyfall. It had a budget of around over 300 million, made 880 million at the box office, clearly underperforming compared to Skyfall that made over $1 billion at the box office. Overall, this film, anyway, with that would come the next film. Now, the next Bond film was actually meant to be released essentially in 2020, but due to the famous COVID outbreak, it didn't. But now, soon, very soon, the next film will be released, which will be 2021's No Time to Die, which will be the next film I'll be reviewing in the series once it's out in cinemas. It's had a while. Probably when it gets on DVD, I'll probably review it around then. And I don't know when next one's gonna be. Anyway, so we kind of reached the end of my Bond movie reviews. Some point down the line, I might decide to do the 1967 Casino Royale film, and then 1983's Never Say Never Again. But anyway, this has been the Steven Hour, and ladies and gentlemen, so long for now.